Okay, we're going live. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we're going live. Mute. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, excellent. So guys, we're going live. Hi everyone. Hello. Greetings. Well, we're so happy to see that so many people are joining us today for our October webinar. Let's wait for a couple of seconds for more people to join and we will begin right away. Okay, 31 people are watching us live. That's fantastic. Hello, 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 hello,
Everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, this emoji is super cute with a little heart.
I know, right?
All right.
Okay, I think we can begin. Hi everyone, once again. Happy to welcome you here at our October webinar. As you already know, the topic for today is teacher talk time and language grading. We believe that all of our Novakid teachers are already equipped with all necessary tools and knowledge to deliver the best classes for our students. We do know that sometimes it's really difficult to resist filling the silence during the lesson and reducing your teacher talk time. So today we're going to walk you through some effective tips, techniques that will help you make your classes more effective, productive, and make sure that your students progress. Just like last time, our host for today is our amazing Brittany Gabriel. She's going to do this webinar for you today, and I will be helping. So now I'm going to pass the word to Brittany. Oh, before we do that, I would just like to mention that, as you can see, we are live streaming this webinar. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, in the comments. We will collect them and definitely will answer all of your questions in the end of the webinar. If we don't manage to do that in time, we will follow up next week in the next newsletter on the teacher portal. So now, please, hi, Brittany.
Hi, Elena. Thank you for such a warm welcome. I'm really excited to be back again presenting this month's webinar. As Elena mentioned, today we are going to be talking about teacher talk time and language grading. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, awesome. So as we previously mentioned, today's topic is on teacher talk time and language grading. So let's take a look at an overview of what we'll be talking about today. We'll start with when do teachers talk, as well as what is teacher talk time and what is student talk time. We'll look at the appropriate ratio of TTT to STT as set by Novakid and why it's important to reduce how much we do talk. We'll look at some strategies for reducing your teacher talk time and increasing student talk time. We'll give you some practical tips. And finally, we'll open the floor to a short Q&A session at the end. Let's begin with a short warm-up. Elena has prepared a question for us.
Right, guys, so right now you are seeing the QR code on your screens. Hopefully you can already see it because we may expect some delays in the live stream. Please use your mobile phones or other devices like tablets to scan the QR code. It will take you to Menti platform where you can submit your answers. So I'm going to share my screen to show the results. If you, for some reason, cannot access the website via the QR code, you're welcome to use the link. It will be in the chat box in the stream. And if you need to submit a password, please let us know because it might require a password. So I'm going to present the results of this questionnaire. And it will appear in a wonderful word cloud. So when do you usually talk during the lesson? share your ideas.
Now, not only when do you talk, so think about what stages you talk, or at what stages you talk, and why do you talk? What are some of the reasons that you are talking during class?
I'd like to know if people manage to access the platform. Let's see. All right, we see some answers popping up. Instructions, feedback, praise, warm up, asking questions, error correction, greetings for sure.
Well, these are all great answers.
Fantastic. Let's wait for others to submit their answers.
So it seems like most people and most teachers understand when we should be talking during our lessons at different stages, as well as to give different types of feedback to our students. And this is excellent. Let's wait another couple seconds for some more responses. I think it's super cool to watch it just grow and grow.
I like how it rearranges. Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys, for submitting your answers.
Oh, wow.
These are great. And looks like we're all on the same page.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Okay. Perfect.
So it looks like giving instructions, corrections, and feedback are the answers that were put in most often, which I think we can all agree is usually when we do talk the most during our lessons. So these are all fantastic answers.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, so Brittany can go back to the presentation. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, let's go back. Okay, so thank you, Elena. I think that was a great warm up for everyone to start activating their brain and thinking about when we do talk. But let's take a look at what exactly is teacher talk time. Well, teacher talk time is exactly what it sounds like. It's the amount of talking that you do as the teacher during your lessons. It includes greetings and goodbyes, asking questions, clarifying issues, giving instructions, giving feedback, and modeling language. Anytime you open your mouth during your lesson, that is teacher talk time. And today we want to reduce how much you do it. Now, I know what you're thinking. This might seem a little bit ridiculous. Obviously, we have to talk during our lessons, or else why would we have jobs? It's not about eliminating teacher talk time completely. It's about doing it in a way that facilitates student participation and student learning. Let's look at how much we should be talking in our classes. Novakid has a set standard for the different amounts of teacher talk time you should be doing at different levels. Take a look at the levels on the left, my laser, on the left, and try to match them with the appropriate ratios on the right. Enter your answers in the chat box and we'll see what ratios we should be using.
Okay, let's give our teachers a few minutes to send their answers in the chat box. We know the numbers, the percentage might be a bit confusing, so let's see if we're all on the same page here.
All right. Let's see if we have any answers.
I see that the delay is actually not that bad.
Which is excellent. Okay, good. Oh, we have some responses coming in. This is great. Okay, I think most of us are on the same page, that we realize that as the student level increases, the amount of talking we should be doing is decreasing. Because ultimately, our goal at Novakid is for our students to be speaking as much English as possible. And as they acquire more knowledge, they're able to express themselves better and in more complex ways. Let's take a look at the standards that are set by Novakid for our teacher talk time. So as many of you have correctly responded, around level 0 and level 1, we should be speaking about 70% of the time, with our students speaking 30% of the time. In levels 2 and 3, it's about 50-50. And in level 4 and above, the student should be speaking a lot more than you. Now, look at these numbers: 70, 70, 50, 50, and 30. These are just guidelines. If you can speak less than 70% of the time in your level 0 class, that's amazing. But you shouldn't be speaking more than 70%. And it's also important to remember that just because you're speaking more in a lower level class does not mean you should be speaking in complex terms. We should always remember to grade our language to the level of the student. This means speaking at a slower pace, using easier grammar, and using easier lexis for them to understand. Now, let's take a look at why we should be reducing our teacher talk time. Here you can see 4 different outcomes that you can expect when you reduce your teacher talk time. Look at the answers below and try to guess what the words are that are missing in the blanks. Don't worry if your answers aren't perfect. We'd like to see your ideas, and we will go through them individually after we finished. So when you reduce teacher talk time, it will encourage student what? It will make a class more. It helps build a better, and it allows for what? What words are missing? Oh, we already have some responses.
That's amazing, Stephen. Participation.
Oh, great.
Student participation, yes.
Build a rapport, fantastic.
I think it's an excellent exercise because it also requires a bit of thinking, but it's, I'm really excited to see some other responses.
Participation, rapport, great. Dynamic, Andrew. Star for Andrew.
You guys are great.
Okay, we have one more that's still missing. The last one allows for
encourage student performance.
Oh,
Close, but
Catherine.
also great. Yeah.
Oh, Catherine, self-correction, fantastic. So now we've got all 4 correct answers. Let's go through them together. When we reduce our teacher talk time, it encourages student participation. When you aren't talking during class, your student is more likely to start talking. And this is a great way to find out if your students understand what they're learning, because they're practicing it more. It also makes your class more dynamic. No student wants to listen to their teacher drone on and on about some boring grammar point or something that's maybe a little bit difficult to understand. When you reduce your teacher talk time, it helps build a better rapport with your student. The more opportunities that they have to speak during class, the more likely they're going to open up and share their lives with you. If you remember our previous webinar on adapting the material, the more you know about your student, the easier it is to adapt the material, which will make them more interested in their lessons and help facilitate their learning. Finally, by reducing your teacher talk time, it allows for self-correction. The more talking the student does, the more they have to practice during the lesson, and the more errors they're likely to have. So you can use a simple prop like an S, no S, simple silent reminders for them to see while they're speaking will help them realize the errors that they are making and be able to correct themselves without you speaking. This type of self-correction allows for higher retention and an increased confidence in your students. Now, we've talked about why we should reduce our teacher talk time. We've talked about how much teacher talk time we should be doing. Let's now look at how. How should we be reducing our teacher talk time? What does effective TTT look like? Effective TTT is giving clear instructions, clear modeling, effective error correction, asking CCQs and ICQs, concept checking questions and instruction checking questions, and allowing your student to have sufficient wait time. Now, we've prepared 7 different tips for you to see different examples of this type of effective TTT. In each of these examples, Elena and I will be role-playing different scenarios with our students. You'll notice that Elena is role-playing maybe what you shouldn't be doing during their lessons. But don't worry, at Novakid, we're all amazing teachers. We've passed our interview, we've done the training, and we're continuing to try to be better. But sometimes it's easy to slip back into old habits. Use these tips as a reminder. Think to yourself, is this something I'm guilty of? And is it something that I can improve on in my lessons? If you notice something that maybe you don't agree with in both Elena's roleplay and my roleplay, please add them in the comments. Then we can see and we can make comments on them as we go along. Let's start with our first tip. Our first tip is on giving instructions. Elena?
Okay, so I'm going to be the teacher now, and Brittany is my student. Okay, Brittany, so now what I would like you to do is to circle the milkshakes. Can you find the milkshakes? Can you recognize them on this picture?
Milkshakes.
Good job.
Okay, now let's try another scenario. Elena, look. Circle juice. Yes, great job. Circle tea. Yes, great work. Elena, look.
Cupcake.
Yes, fantastic work. Now, Elena and I have modeled 2 different ways of teaching this slide because tip number 1 is to shorten your instructions. We want to be using commands, not questions, when we ask our students to do something. What does this mean? We're not going to ask our students, can you circle this? Can you see this? Can you do this? Because when we use the words can you, we are bringing in a rising intonation, and we're teaching our students to associate this rising intonation with questions, not with commands and instructions. We want to use only language at their level. Please circle. Please read. Look. Listen. Use pictures, gestures, and miming, and a lot of TPR to help your students understand. You'll also notice that after I modeled 2 different examples, I asked Elena to give me the words. I'm eliciting cupcake. I'm still using miming. I'm using my TPR, and I'm eliciting the information from Elena. I'm gradually giving her more control. So tip number 1, shorten your instructions. Let's look at our second tip about wait time.
All right, so presumably we're using the spinner for this game, and let's pretend it lands on number 2. Okay, Brittany, what did you do yesterday?
I went.
Where did you go? To the park?
I went.
To your grandmother's house? To school?
I went.
Did you go to the cinema?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
To the
good.
cinema.
Great job. Okay.
Now let's look at another example. This time we roll the die and it lands on 3. Elena, what did you do yesterday?
I made I made pancake.
Very close. Elena, pancake or pancakes?
Pancakes. I made pancakes.
Great sentence. Now, I know it can be incredibly hard to wait sometimes, especially with our lower levels or shy students. They can really appreciate this tip number 2, to be patient and wait. Don't be a pause eater. What does this mean? It means after you ask your question, mentally count in your head to 5 or 7, however long you think your student needs. Maybe some students need a little bit longer to wait. That's okay. What we don't want to do is become self-answerers. If you noticed, Elena didn't wait. I started the sentence and she immediately started to give me answers. And eventually, I just agreed with her because I wanted it to be over. And with your shy students, it can be really, really difficult. And they're more likely to just grasp at any answer you give them because they're embarrassed, they're nervous, or maybe they don't know. Now, I understand that you might be talking in your head, you might be counting to 5, and the student still doesn't give an answer. This is when you can give options. Did you make pancakes or pizza? Don't give them just one option for them to say yes or no. Give them 2 options to choose from. It will also help them with their own memory. Maybe they didn't make pancakes or pizza, but it will help them remember what they did do. And again, this is very, very important, especially with your low levels and your shy students. Let's look at our third tip on language grading.
All right, Brittany. Now let's look at this word. Can you see today?
Today?
Yes. Can you see the letter T? Is it capitalized or is it small?
T.
Is it at the beginning or at the end of the sentence?
T.
Good job, Brittany.
Thank you. Now, let's try again. Elena, please read.
Today is Monday.
Great job. Elena, let's count the words. 1,
2, 3.
Circle the first word.
Today.
Look. Big T or small t?
Big.
Yes, great job. Look. He has got a car. Circle the first word.
He.
Yes. Big H or small h?
Big H.
Yes. Look. Big T, big H. The first word always has a
Big.
big letter. Great job. Look.
Monday.
Yes. Ooh. Big M or small m?
Big M.
Yes. Monday, Tuesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Great job. All days of the week have?
Big letter.
Yes, great job, Elena. Don't forget to reward your students for doing a great job. Let's look. Tip number 3, eliminate incidental language. Don't be an over-explainer. Now, we start teaching capitalization rules at the end of level 1, but students will see it again at the end of level 4. At this stage, we want students to start noticing patterns. They don't need to know these are the rules for capitalization. Capitalization is a very big word, and students don't care. So it's really important to only answer what the student asks or what they need to know. Don't ask your students, do you understand? And don't say, it's easy, right? This can seriously decrease your student confidence. We want them to be comfortable answering questions because learning English isn't easy. And sometimes they're not going to understand, but they might be too nervous to tell you. Another thing that is super, super, super important, always preview your lessons. Even if you've taught the lesson before, it's very important to check to make sure that nothing has changed. It is really obvious if a teacher is reading the teacher's notes before teaching a slide. And if you don't know exactly what's coming next, you haven't made a plan on how you're going to teach it to your student. So how can you expect your student to fully understand if you're not ready yourself? So it's very important to always preview your lessons before you teach them. Let's look at our next tip on methodology.
Sorry, Brittany,
Yes.
sorry. Before we moving to the next tip, I would just like to highlight how amazing it is that our teachers are so active in the chat box. And quite a few teachers mentioned that the tip with the slide for capitalized letters was really helpful. Yeah, so that was great. Great. We're really glad that you guys find it useful. And this is exactly what this webinar is for us to share and exchange ideas on teaching and help us all improve. Wonderful.
Well, that makes me feel like all warm and fuzzy inside. All right, well, let's go on to tip number 4, which is methodology.
All right, Brittany. So today we are going to learn past continuous tense. And as you can see, Brittany, past continuous is formed with a personal pronoun, the verb to be in the past form, and then the verb with the ing suffix.
Oh.
Is that clear? Do you understand?
Yes.
I thought so.
Now, it's really important to realize that all of our lessons at Novakid, especially when teaching grammar, are presented in the PPP format. What does this mean? First, we present the grammar, then we practice the grammar, and finally, the student will produce the grammar, hopefully independently. So let's take a look at each of these stages individually and how we can facilitate learning while minimizing our incidental language and not being over-explainers. Let's look at the presentation stage. Elena, please read.
Were they making a cake at 7:30 p.m. yesterday?
Good.
They weren't making a cake.
Good.
They were watching films.
Fantastic. Great reading. Elena, when did this happen?
Yesterday.
Yes. Is yesterday now In the future or the past?
The past.
Yes, great job. Do we know what time this happened?
Yes.
Great. What time?
7:30.
Yes. So it happened over a period of time. So we must use the
ing.
Yes, the ing form. If we use the ing form, we must use
Were.
yes, because this is in the
Past.
yes, fantastic. Now, again, I did not use the words past continuous because right now I'm just presenting the grammar. I want my student to realize the patterns on their own and to understand that we use this in the past over a period of time. Then we move on to the practice stage. I'm going to model the first answer. I wasn't watching a film at 7:30 p.m. yesterday. I'm going to encourage my student to make the next sentence by circling he and maybe gesturing to my student. I'm less likely to cut my ear in level 4 because, again, we want to treat our students as more mature learners as they go up in the levels.
He wasn't flying a kite at 7:30 p.m. yesterday.
Fantastic sentence. Now, as Elena and I are making sentences, I'm going to cross out the words we're using because at this stage, we want our students using as many words as possible so that they get as much practice as possible. If my student is a higher level student and they're capable, I might cross out the time and ask my student to produce their own time, therefore giving them more chances to extend and to put in their own ideas. So we finished the presentation stage. We've practiced. Now I want my student to produce the language on her own. This is the production stage. I'll ask my student, what were Sam and Anne doing at 4 p.m. yesterday?
Sam and Anne doing homework at 4 p.m. yesterday.
Elena, look.
Sam and Anne were doing homework at 4 p.m. yesterday.
Fantastic. Now, you'll notice that I asked the same question as the model answer. And I do this on purpose because this is your student's first opportunity to produce the language without all of the steps laid out for them. So if my student struggles, I can highlight the model sentence at the bottom to give them a clue. Therefore, they're able to self-correct, again, leading to a higher retention rate. Then I'll ask my student another question. What were Anne and Sam doing at 5 p.m. yesterday?
Anne and Sam were watching cartoons at 5 p.m. yesterday.
Fantastic. So my student was able to remember the model because I pointed it out to her and use that model to change it to the question that I'm asking. And at this point too, I'm also going to ask my student to give me a question back because in level 4, or really any level you think a student is capable, we want our students to be asking questions as well and practicing doing that. Let's look at the right approach to teaching. As I mentioned before, at Novakid, we use the PPP method: presentation, practice, and production. Next time you have a grammar lesson, take a look at the slides. I'm sure they follow this format. All right, let's move on to tip number 5 on asking questions.
All right, Brittany, tell me, do you like blue?
Yes.
Is the sky blue?
Yes.
Do you like yellow?
No.
Is lemon yellow?
Yes.
And do you like cats?
No. Now, as you can see here, Elena is doing most of the talking. She's not really facilitating any sort of discussion. Everything she's asking is yes or no. Now, a lot of the lessons now have free talk slides at the end. These are a great opportunity for your students to practice what they've been learning and for you to see how much they've retained. I'm curious, what questions would you ask for this slide? Choose one of the topics and create a question for your students. Write your question in the chat box.
I see some of the teachers already commented that those were not good questions because they did not promote full sentence answers. That is correct.
Yes.
Perfect. Francesca says she would use open-ended questions, right? Can you give us some examples, guys? If you're looking at this particular slide. Mm-hmm.
What color is this? Good. What color is your room?
Okay. What color is your cat?
Good.
What blue things do you like? Perfect. What's your favorite color?
Good. I think all of these questions are great. And when we're talking about asking these open-ended questions, I like to remember the phrase, work smarter, not harder. We want to be encouraging discussion with your students and minimizing your speaking while still guiding the conversation. Let's take a look. Ooh. First, it's important to remember that no matter what question you ask, you want your students to be speaking in full sentences. And we want them to increase their fluency while using the grammar that we've taught them. Let's look now at another example. My student has learned using going to for the future. Now, I'm going to ask my student, what are you going to do next weekend?
I'm going to go to the house of my grandmother and see a film at Saturday.
Fantastic. What are you going to eat at the cinema?
I'm going to eat popcorns and cola.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Now, at Novakid, we want our students to be confident English speakers. Did Elena use the grammar going to go correctly? Yes, she did. Did she make other errors? Yes, she did, but they did not distract from her overall message. It's important when you're giving feedback to realize, why are you giving feedback? If I were to correct every single error that Elena made in her sentence, not only is it going to increase my teacher talk time, it's going to shatter her confidence. And that's not what we want. If you're teaching going to for the future, it's important that they're using going to correctly. The rest of the information that they provide, as long as you can understand what they're saying, does not need to be picked out individually and corrected. We want to focus on the message during free talk, not just every single error. So, tip number 5, ask open-ended questions to encourage free talk and to minimize your speaking while guiding the conversation. And finally, to remember why you're correcting them. Let's move on to tip number 6, meaningful feedback.
Okay, Brittany, what do you like to do at the weekend?
I like to meet with friends.
Oh, you meet with friends. That's wonderful.
Yes. Let's try again. Elena, what do you like to do at the weekend?
I like to go to the park.
Who do you see at the park?
I see friends.
Oh, who is your friend?
My friend is Mark.
How often do you see Mark?
I see Mark every day.
That's wonderful. Now, tip number 6, don't echo your students' answers. If you noticed in Elena's example, she repeated exactly what I said to her back to me. Now, this is a common correction technique called echoing, but usually when we echo our students, we are changing the words a little bit so that it is correct. But Elena didn't change anything. She gave me exactly what I said. But what did I do wrong? And that's what happens with your students. They come to associate your echoing with a correction. But if they didn't make an error, they don't understand what they did wrong, and they're less likely to speak if their teacher just keeps repeating everything they've said. And this can be detrimental. Instead, avoid repeating their sentences and ask follow-up questions. Again, this is why it's really important to preview your lessons and to think, what follow-up questions are you going to ask? It's really easy to ask questions like who, what, when, where, why, how often, because this will give you more information and allow the student more time to talk. I know sometimes it can be difficult. When you don't know what to say next, you're more inclined to just repeat what they said while thinking in your head, what should I be saying next? But instead of doing that, ask your follow-up question or give positive feedback for the answers they did give you. Let's look at our final tip, self-reflection. Now, self-reflection comes in the form of rewatching your lessons. I'm curious, how often do you rewatch your lessons? There will be a poll in the chat box. Choose the answer that best suits how often you rewatch your lessons. Try to be honest. Remember, it's anonymous.
What about you, Brittany? How often do you rewatch your lessons?
Well, probably not as often as I should, because I am definitely guilty of some of these tips. Nobody is perfect, and sometimes you do slip into these old habits. And when I do watch my lessons, I always learn something new. And I learn, oh, I should explain this differently. Maybe the student would have a better retention rate if I allowed them more opportunity to speak.
Right.
So probably somewhere between never and sometimes.
Well, good to know that sometimes still happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea to reflect on your own classes just every now and then, and look at the techniques from a different perspective and see what you can do differently next time. I see that we already have
Good.
answers.
Sometimes, never, always. Okay. Now,
well, it's good to see that 0% answered I don't know how, because we were just about to give you a tip. Yeah.
But for anybody who's watching this live stream, not live, we will show you how to rewatch your lessons. But why is it important? Like I mentioned before, it's really important to see and reflect on how you are teaching. Do you fall into any of the how do you fall into any of the issues that we have previously mentioned? Are you guilty of any of these? And is there something you could do better? Is your teacher talk time effective? The best way to find out is by watching your lessons. And I think a big deterrent that some teachers might face is that lessons are 25 minutes long. You don't have to watch the whole lesson. If you remember while teaching that you're teaching grammar and you think, I probably could have done that better, just watch that 5-minute segment of your lesson. Taking 5 minutes once a month, once a week to reflect on your lessons will encourage you to do better and help you become a better teacher. Now, for those of you who are watching after the stream and maybe don't know how to rewatch your lessons, This is how you can do it. If you go to your main page of your dashboard and you look under classes without feedback or completed classes, you will see a small video camera button. If you click on this button, it will take you to a separate screen where you can watch your lesson. Again, you don't have to watch the whole thing. If you don't think you have time, you can fast forward through it to watch different sections. If you know that you struggle with teaching grammar or you struggle with teaching vocabulary, watch how you taught it for that lesson. All right, so at the end of the day, we have 2 summary questions that I would like you to take away and think about. First of all, how much do I talk? Remember, if you are talking, your student is not talking. Every time you're about to speak, think about how you can reformulate that into a speaking opportunity for your student. Could it be in the form of them giving an answer, them modeling a question, or them extending on the material? And second, does the student understand me? Don't forget to grade your language. If your student is a lower level, you'll be speaking at a slower pace. You'll be using less vocabulary, and you will be speaking with easier grammar and easier lexis. However, once your students are at a higher level, you'll be able to speak more authentically and use more difficult concepts. So again, those 2 final questions are, how much do I talk? And does the student understand me? And if you ask yourself these questions during and after your lessons, I guarantee you'll be able to reduce how much you're speaking during your lessons. All right, I think it's time for us to open up the floor for some questions and answers.
Very exciting. While we are, okay, yeah, we already have some questions coming in. But I would just like to mention that there were quite a few questions related to the same topic, and that concerns parents' interference during the lesson. A few teachers mentioned that often parents just try to correct their answers when the students are trying to convey their message. So how would you normally deal with that? What do you recommend when a parent constantly interjects with the answers before the child has time to self-correct?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I know it's something that we have all faced.
Absolutely.
And first of all, I like to think, is this a student that I have once? Or is this my regular student that I'm going to have for the next 6 months to a year? That's the first thing you need to look at. If it's a student that you only have once and it's a one-time student, at this point, we don't know that student's background. Maybe it's their first lesson. Maybe they need that support from their parent. If it is a student that you know that you're going to be having for a long time, I give my student 2 lessons to have that parent support, because the parent is probably just as nervous as the student. The parent wants their student to do well as well. So it's kind of a battle between them. If it hasn't improved by the 3rd class, I write in my feedback and I say, I think Elena would thrive in a classroom where she is given the opportunity to speak independently. So as a teacher and a parent, let's try to give Elena 5 seconds to think of the answer before we offer a solution. After those seconds, and then I like to explain exactly my method. After those 5 seconds, I'll give her some options, and then I will help her further. And I like to explain to the parent why, because sometimes the parent thinks they're helping. And if the parent thinks they're helping, they're more likely to continue doing it. But if you explain to them politely why you're doing it, then they're more likely to understand and slowly back off. I do see that some people like to say, oh, wow, thank you, mommy. But I don't have the guts to do that. So
and I think sometimes it only encourages them to take more part in the process.
Yeah,
you acknowledge. Yeah.
I think you need to do what works for you, but I don't have the confidence to say, great job, mom, you get a star. But if that works for you, it might not be the most polite way to do it. So I think that's another reason why I don't go that route. I write in feedback. I can give you a short sample of what I would write exactly in feedback, and it can be added to the handout. So you can see different ways of dealing with that.
That would be great. Thank you, Brittany, for this elaborate answer. I think it's a very delicate issue a lot of our teachers are struggling with. It's just that we have to, show the parents that they're there to provide some support for their students. However, we're focusing on our students' progress, not the parents speaking English in class.
Exactly.
Okay, there's another great question. At what point do you use terms with your student, such as present perfect or present continuous? I guess we're talking about grammatical terms.
Yes. So I believe it is actually one or two slides after the ones that we were talking about with the presentation, practice, and production, where it gives the student a timeline. And at the top of that timeline, it says past continuous, and it shows you on that timeline exactly where the past continuous happens. So this is the point where I would introduce, this is called the past continuous, and we use the past continuous in the past over a period of time. But I wouldn't introduce the term right away. The whole lesson is about the past continuous, or it's about the present perfect and past simple. With that, it's really important to introduce those grammar terms once they see the timeline. Because if you try to introduce them before the words are actually on the screen, it's really hard for them to remember those words and to associate them with the grammar term that you're teaching. So I try to not wait for the last minute, but wait until it is an appropriate time for them to see it and to see the words together. And hopefully by the time it comes out of my mouth, they've seen it at the top of the slide already. So they've already begun to associate it on their own.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. I hope that answered your question, guys. Another one is, how do you get a student to ask you questions in return, especially younger students? I know Brittany knows how to do it because I've seen you do it in class.
So when it comes to having my students ask me questions, there's definitely a learning curve. So expect it to fail the first time. It might even fail the second time you do it, but the more you do it, the easier it will become. So even from level 0, I would say level 0, unit 3, my students have started to ask me questions. So again, Elena and I role played a bit of that, where I've circled it twice and she gave me the words. And then I asked her, what are the words? I elicited it from her. I really like to use it for the slide on fruit. So after I go through all the fruit and I say, do you like apples? Do you like lemons? Do you like kiwis? At this point, the student has heard the question multiple times. So I have them ask me. Again, I help model the question, do you like? And then they say the fruit. They really love checking off and Xing off my answers because it lets them be more involved and to write on the screen. And again, don't give up. If it doesn't work the first time, rewatch your lesson. How could you present it differently next time so that they're able to understand and they're able to do exactly what you want them to do?
Okay.
Do you have any other ideas, Elena?
Not really.
Okay.
I think that was really good. I was just trying to choose another question. So I got a little bit sidetracked. I've got 2 more questions, but one of them is still related to the topic of parents' participation.
Okay.
One of the teachers is asking, can I write to the parent in the feedback to not correct their kids while they're learning, or that's not a good idea? I think we've sort of covered that when you were answering the previous questions, right?
Yeah, I try to be very delicate with my parents because I want them to come back.
Of course.
I want my students to grow with me and I want to grow with them. So And for the parents, the parents are growing with me too. So I try not to be direct. I try to go around in an indirect way to ask the parent to back off in a nice way, to allow their child more independence, because it's going to be great for them to be more independent in the classroom. And they won't constantly be looking to their mom or dad to give them the answers. They'll be able to do it on their own. But I try not to be direct. I try to be as indirect and polite as possible in my feedback to parents, but I do address it.
Yeah,
I think around the third class.
It's a good idea to try and make it look in a way that we're focusing on the positive outcomes of eliminating parents' participation, but not on the negative effects of their interference. So in that case, I think they will see it differently. They won't see it as an aggressive message saying, please back off. But all right.
I want to make a quick comment. Nikki,
sure.
Nika, sorry, I'm really sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, wrote that she found the phrase "your turn" with proper modeling works well. And I definitely agree. I always do the "your turn" and cup my ear when I want them to bring it back to me. And I think that's a great point to mention. So thank you
Absolutely.
for writing that down.
And there's another question, not really related to teacher talk time, but anyway, how do you handle a naughty kid?
So in that same message to parents with the please back off message, I also include what I would like their role to be. So I also include that if the student seems distracted and kind of gets away from the lesson, that I would like my parents to gently guide the student back to the lesson. If the parent is nowhere to be seen and the naughty behavior continues, you can always inform intercom. Or I like to write a different type of message in the chat. I'll say something like, Elena would benefit from having a parent close by during the lesson, or someone to check on her every 5 to 7 minutes to make sure she's on track. And if a parent receives this message, it's for a reason. And the parents are going to know it's for a reason. So they might actually rewatch the lesson. They might go back and see, well, why is my teacher saying this about my child? What happened today? And I guarantee the next lesson, your parent is probably going to be close by, or at least within earshot of the student.
For sure. Hopefully they will be there. Another question, with level 0 students that refuse to participate no matter what you do you go through the slides yourself or keep trying on one slide? I think it also can relate to students who are so-called non-speaking students. Yes. Sometimes they don't say a word throughout the lesson. So what do you normally do?
So if a student doesn't say a single word through the lesson, when I come to the feedback, I like to write again. I like to emphasize the importance of the silent learning phase. So why is being silent important? Well, you and I and everyone who's watching started to learn their language by listening to it first. That's how you learn a language. You listen as much as possible. And then when you do start to speak, you generally start to speak better than if someone forced you. So I like to emphasize this to the parents, that it's really important for them to think and to be silent as much as they need to be. There's no rush to repeating complete sentences. But I also like to emphasize that the student was in the classroom the whole time. They listened the whole time. So they're still absorbing the lesson material. Now, I'm not going to select that the student can go on to the next level. The student will need to redo the level, or not the level, the lesson. But I don't think that it's a wasted class. I do still go through the material. I have a puppet. So me and the puppet, we do the material. And the puppet is the student and I'm the teacher. And anytime I would like the student to talk, I will have the puppet talk. And then sometimes the puppet becomes the teacher and the student then is expected to give me the answer. And usually after about 10 minutes, 10 minutes can be a really long time, I know, but the student will start to repeat single words. Congratulate those words. Give them as much praise as possible for those single words that they're actually saying during the lesson, because next class they'll speak more. And eventually those students are usually the ones that are the most outgoing during class. Sometimes they just start off really shy.
It's true. We have another comment, which is really interesting because it's the opposite of what we've just discussed. I have a student who doesn't stop talking. It's hard to keep her on track with the lesson material sometimes. There was no question after that, but I guess it's just like, have you ever had a student like that, Brittany? Or...
Absolutely. And you need to realize the times when your student just needs to talk. Sometimes your student just needs to talk. And it's always a way, you can always find a way to somehow bring them back on. And you know what? Maybe they're talking and maybe they're not talking about colors when that's what you're learning. Find the grammar point that the student should be learning and studying and try to cover that grammar point with what the student is saying.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I have a student who is pretty advanced for level 0, and the parents understand and they know that as long as the student is speaking in full sentences and still using the grammar that they should be learning, the topic isn't necessarily the most important, especially at the lower levels. Let them talk. Try to pull in, if they're learning colors, try to pull in the colors. Students love Paw Patrol. So if they keep talking about Paw Patrol, ask them like, what color is Marshall? What color is Chase? Bring in those colors. Do you like Marshall? Do you like Chase? Can Marshall fly? Can Chase swim? Bring in what you're learning and bring in their ideas. But sometimes they just need to talk, and that's okay too.
They just need to let it all out.
Exactly.
Those are brilliant ideas. Thank you, Brittany. So I think we don't really have any more questions, but if anything, if you guys still have some and you can't think of one on the spot, just let us know. Send a message to Teacher Ops, and we will definitely cover all of them in our next newsletter, which will be posted next Monday. We will be posting the recording of this webinar, as well as some handouts with helpful tips from Brittany. Thank you very much. We are also going to send you a questionnaire form, and I think it should appear in the chat box right about now. So please don't forget to fill it out. We would really like to know some of your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see if it shows. We'll take a couple of seconds. Jessie says, I kept thinking I'm a bad teacher by allowing my students to talk and doing the things you're suggesting. But as you can see,
sometimes
as long as it's productive,
they need to talk. And if you do feel like you haven't completed the lesson objectives because you've just gotten so far off track, it's okay to redo the lesson. If you feel like you haven't completed everything, you can always redo the lesson. But I do try, even when they are talking, as much as possible to cover the main objectives. Oh, I like this. Tests me on Paw Patrol dog name. This is when I like Google it really quickly so that I like Google image the different dogs.
Yeah.
or one student really loved Octonauts, and I had never heard of it before, but you better believe within 30 seconds, I knew exactly who everybody was. So you have to do what you have to do to keep them on track.
Exactly. I'm not even sure I know who these are. I do know Paw Patrol. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for your active participation. This was really awesome. Mm-hmm. I think these webinars gives us such an amazing opportunity to just bring each other closer. And now we know that we are a huge community of teachers, and we really want you to know that everyone is here to help. So we all have the same problems, struggles.
Yes, absolutely. And if you have any other questions, you can email Teacher Ops. Take a look at the upcoming newsletter that they'll be they'll be adding this in, and then you can, we'll see you next time. Our next webinar in November.
Yep. Really excited about that. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all the cute messages.
Yes, it was so nice.
I really hope that you don't forget to fill out the form. We really need your feedback. Thank you. And I guess, yeah, we're going to wrap up.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming and for all your wonderful comments. And we'll see you next time at our next webinar.
Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.